Yo, guys, this is Riku. It's been a long time since I've made a video, my bad, but I'm here to talk about one of my favorite franchises, No More Heroes. Now, you're probably wondering, why am I doing this now? Specifically because No More Heroes 1 and 2 just got shadow dropped on the Switch eShop uh, for anticipation for No More Heroes 3. Now, there's probably tons of people out there that have never touched a No More Heroes game, or maybe you're like a veteran like me that's wondering if this ports for these games are any good. And you're in luck. I just got done beating both of these games, and I'll be talking about specifically the port job themselves, and also just thoughts on the games and whether or not this is a good time to jump into the series. So yeah, we'll get into that in just a moment. Keep in mind though, this video will be completely unscripted, so sorry if there's some sort of mistake or, just something I forget. I'm just doing this from the top of my head. So sorry about that, and forgive me on that front. But with that being said, let's get into it. So let's talk about the port jobs themselves. So both the games run at 1080p 60 frames per second. They also added controller support for the Joy-Con and the Switch for not needing any motion controls. So if you're the type of person who doesn't like motion controls, that is an option. There is also motion controls with the Joy-Cons. So if you want to play it how it was originally intended and developed with the Wiimote in mind, use the Joy-Cons like it was a nunchuck and Wiimote. So that is an option. I will say the port itself is pretty wonderful with all these options and how the quality of the port itself is, although there is a few issues that I have with it. The biggest issue that I have with the game itself is the audio mixing. Now, I don't really recall this being an issue in the original release because it's been such a long time. I don't really remember. But I will say that the audio mixing is out of whack, specifically with 1 more than 2, but it is still an issue with 2, where the sound effects are so loud when you're battling with the characters screaming and the katana slashes that it overtakes the music. You can't even hear the music anymore, and it's so deafening that it actually started hurting my ears, which was a thing that not only I had a problem with, but when I was streaming this game, which, by the way, twitch.tv/DrRiku if you want to see me when I stream, by the way. Shameless plug-in right there. Sorry about that. That a lot of my viewers were saying the same thing I was, where it was really rough. So that is something that to consider with this release. Hopefully this can be patched. You can kind of alleviate it with mixing, like changing the sound setting volume in the options, but that's not a complete fix because the sound effects option is also bound to the voices. So by lowering the sound effects, you're not only lowering the sounds themselves, but also the voices. So really, it's a problem. It's more of a problem in the original release. The second game isn't as bad, but it's still an issue there. That is the biggest problem that I have with this port. The other issues that I have is that there are some pre-rendered cutscenes that do show up in the game. They're not frequent that much, but when they do, you will notice, and you can tell that they're rendered at a lower resolution and frame rate, and it's really jarring when you see, the game's at 1080p 60, and then when you go to a cutscene, sometimes you'll see something that looks like it's 480p. It's very noticeable, and hopefully, that isn't a problem for some people. I understand it was a limitation what they had, but that is something to also talk about. And the other thing too, there was a few frame rate drops, but it wasn't bad at all. For the most part, this game runs buttery smooth 98% of the time. So that is something to keep in mind with that going forward. The games themselves. So if you couldn't tell already, I'm a huge fan of both of these games and this franchise. I'm really excited for No More Heroes 3, and I love these games. I do. I just do. The music, the characters, the story, the absurdity, just everything about it is great. Even the gameplay is really fun. Now, the biggest issue with this game is the level of jank, and what I mean by that is the way the game feels and how repetitive it can get at times. If you're looking at the screen right now, I'm just slashing enemies left and right and just dodging occasionally. That's pretty much the whole game. That is literally the whole game. It's not that deep. It is fun. There are many games that you can do that do happen that help alleviate the repetitive nature of the combat. But for the most part, that's just how the games are made. If you go into this game with the mindset of it being a little repetitive and you don't mind the over the top nature of the games, which I will warn you right now, these games are incredibly violent, incredibly vulgar, and incredibly sexual. Like what I mean by that is it's these are the things you probably don't want your parents knowing that you're playing. It's really rough. It's if you can take in all that, the level of jank and just the over the top nature of this game, you will enjoy the hell out of it. I love these games. They still hold up pretty well. I do think that me replaying them pretty much cemented my thoughts that I had originally. It's a little repetitive, it's a little janky, but for the most part, as long as you're thinking from the perspective of these games are going to be fun in both its writing and both of its gameplay, and just the music is a fantastic. If you just go into it knowing what kind of experience you're going to expect, I think you're going to come out loving it, like as much as everyone else does with the fandom. So, and also if you're a longtime fan, man, this is they don't add anything new, but I think the nature of seeing everything in 60 frames per second and also preparing for No More Heroes 3, I think these ports are really, really good. I think that if you are wondering if you should get into the franchise now before No More Heroes 3, I really recommend that you do play both of these games before No More Heroes 3 and Travis Strikes Again, which I know that game gets a little bit of flack by different people, different parts of the community. I didn't love it as much as the first two games, but it still has a lot of cool story stuff, and the writing is pretty much on par, and I would even say probably the best out of the franchise. So, yeah, just if you're wondering if this now is the time, it is definitely the time. This is probably the best timeline to be in right now for a No More Heroes fan. Everything's available on the Switch. I really recommend that you go out of your way to buy these games. They're affordable right now. They're $19.99 on the eShop each. Right now they're having a sale. They're, as the time of this recording of this video, it is $18, 10% off. So, hey man, I would go buy a copy, tell your friends, get 7 copies. Just go get it. Hopefully, this with this selling well, which I've noticed that it's in the top 10. There will be a physical release, which will be hype as shit. I'll definitely buy it as well. So, thank you guys for watching this video. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I also stream on Twitch tons of different games. Some really niche stuff like No More Heroes, also really popular things. And yeah, what do you guys think? Are you excited for No More Heroes 3? What did you play the ports of these games? Are you a longtime fan, but first timer getting into the franchise? Let me know in the comments, boys. Until next time, have a good one. Woo!